Wait a second, why are there so many rocks under the railway tracks? Putting cement on them won't make them stronger. So why does the whole world use rocks? If the tracks were on cement, the pressure of each train would be concentrated in one place and the tracks would gradually deteriorate. They act as absorbers. When a train of thousands of tons passes by, they spread the pressure, keeping the tracks stable. But that's not all. These rocks drain water, prevent grass from growing, and even stop the tracks from moving. One solution, 3 problems solved. The crazy thing is that we all see the train, but the real heroes are these rocks. Now tell me, did you know the reason before today? Practice science. Have you ever looked out the window of a moving train or stood at a railway platform and wondered why the tracks are surrounded by a sea of rough, jagged stones? It is one of those everyday sights that almost everyone passes by without a second thought. We admire the sleek engineering of modern locomotives, marvel at the speed of high-speed rail, and appreciate the vast networks that connect distant cities, but we rarely spare a glance for the ground beneath it all. To an untrained eye, those heavy gray rocks might look like cheap gravel thrown down just to fill empty space or finish a construction project. Some people might even assume that pouring a solid block of concrete or cement under the tracks would be a far superior, cleaner, and modern solution. After all, concrete feels permanent, smooth, and indestructible. But in the world of civil engineering, appearances can be deeply deceiving. Pouring a rigid layer of cement beneath those steel rails would actually lead to catastrophic failures. The entire global railway network relies on these unassuming stones, known technically as track ballast, and their presence is not an accident or a cost-cutting shortcut. It is a brilliant, battle-tested triumph of mechanical physics and civil engineering that solves multiple critical structural challenges simultaneously. To truly appreciate why rocks are used, you first have to understand the mind-boggling forces at play whenever a train rolls down the line. A standard freight train or passenger train does not just weigh a few tons, it weighs thousands of tons. When this massive, heavy steel machine hurtles forward at high speeds, it generates immense downward pressure, fierce lateral vibrations, and massive shock waves. Steel rails and wooden or concrete cross ties, also known as sleepers, are responsible for holding the train, but they cannot carry or dissipate that crushing burden all on their own. If those rails were bolted directly onto a hard, unyielding concrete slab, every single pass of a heavy train would concentrate intense physical stress onto isolated spots. Concrete, despite its apparent strength, is extremely rigid and brittle under point impact forces. Over time, the relentless pounding of thousands of tons would cause the concrete to crack, shatter, and erode from the inside out. The track components would experience tremendous kinetic bounce back, destroying the steel wheels, shattering the ties, and causing the entire structure to deteriorate rapidly. This is precisely where the rocks come in to act as the ultimate shock-absorbing cushion. Track ballast is not made of smooth, rounded river pebbles or ordinary garden gravel. Instead, engineers specifically select crushed, sharp, angular stones like granite, basalt, or quartzite. Because these stones have sharp edges and rough surfaces, they interlock tightly with one another when packed together. When a heavy train approaches and presses down on the tracks, this interlocked network of stones flexes just enough to cushion the impact. They act as a semi-flexible structural foundation that absorbs kinetic energy and immediately dissipates the intense point pressure across a wide surface area. Rather than the ground taking a sharp, localized hit, the weight is distributed evenly across the soil underneath, preventing the ground from sinking or caving in. When the train passes, the stones settle back into place, maintaining structural stability without permanently deforming or cracking. Yet, acting as a massive pressure absorber is only one part of the job. These humble rocks solve several other life-or-death engineering problems that would otherwise derail the entire system. Consider what happens during heavy rainfall or violent storms. Water is the natural enemy of any major ground infrastructure. If water pools around the tracks, the soil underneath becomes soft, muddy, and unstable. Soft mud cannot support a multi-ton train, and wet conditions would quickly rust the steel rails and rot wooden sleepers. A solid cement foundation would trap water on top or create deep cracks where water could enter, freeze in winter, expand, and split the structure apart. Ballast rocks form a porous bed filled with tiny gaps. When rain pours down, the water drains instantly through the spaces between the stones and flows away from the tracks, keeping the foundation completely dry, firm, and structurally sound year-round. In addition to drainage, nature presents another constant threat: vegetation. If plants, weeds, bushes, or trees were allowed to grow freely around railway lines, their roots would penetrate the soil, displace the tracks, break apart the foundation, and block the operator's view. Thick vegetation also creates slick conditions on the steel rails, drastically reducing friction and making it dangerous or impossible for trains to brake efficiently. A thick layer of crushed rock creates a harsh, sterile environment that prevents seeds from taking root, keeping the track bed clear of intrusive plant life without needing constant chemical spraying or manual weeding. Furthermore, these rocks hold the tracks firmly in place laterally. Trains do not just press downward, as they navigate curves or travel at high speeds, they push outward with tremendous force. The heavy bed of interlocked stones tightly hugs the sleepers, locking the track grid into position so it cannot slide sideways, shift out of alignment, or buckle under extreme summer heat expansion. When you weigh all these factors together, it becomes clear that a simple layer of crushed stone achieves what complex high-tech machinery often struggles to do. It dampens deafening vibrations, distributes colossal weight, drains torrential water, suppresses aggressive plant growth, and locks the track alignment firmly in place. It is a single, remarkably elegant solution that solves half a dozen severe engineering hurdles at a fraction of the cost of complex alternatives. We live in a world obsessed with glossy screens, high-tech aerodynamics, and sleek modern designs. We stand on platforms waiting for powerful engines to pull us across countrysides, mesmerized by the speed and scale of modern transportation. Yet, all of that speed, safety, and reliability rests entirely on a humble, quiet foundation beneath the steel rails. The train gets all the glory, the attention, and the photographs, but the crushed rocks underneath are the unsung, hard-working heroes making the journey possible. So the next time you hear the thunderous roar of a train passing by, take a moment to look down and appreciate the silent, clever science resting right under the wheels.